Up next, let's queer up faith. Texas pastor wants to, quote, put a bullet in the brains of LGBTQ plus pastors. Pastor Dillon of Stedfast Baptist Church in Watauga, Texas, has sparked outrage with his inflammatory remarks against LGBTQ plus individuals. Oz, known for his extremist views, recently condemned Christian churches affirming LGBTQ plus people, whom he calls sodomites and sexual predators. He specifically criticized Pastor Charles Andrew Stanley of North Point Ministries for inviting a married same-sex couple to speak at a conference. Oz said, quote, "These faggots should get a bullet in their brain," end quote. He emphasizes that queer individuals should receive the death penalty rather than be allowed to preach.
And in this conference, he invited 2 sodomites that were married to each other to preach sermons for the conference. And the quote from these 2 sodomites, we're talking about how they're so excited to be able to preach because it's the message that the children need to hear. So they're literally just admitting their heart, like, we're here behind the pulpit so that we could defile children with our message. That's where we've gotten as a nation by being nice to sodomites. First it was they can get married. Then it was they can have all equal rights. Then it was, well, we could have drag shows out in public. Then it was, well, we could take children into the drag shows too. Then it was like, well, we could allow homosexuals to attend church. Then it was, well, we can now let drag queens attend church. Now there's faggots behind the pulpit. Why? Because of nice guys like Andy Stanley that won't say what needs to be said, which is that these faggots should get a bullet in their brain. Right. That they should get the death penalty, not be preaching behind the pulpit. What a nice guy Andy Stanley is. What a nice guy you are for letting children in your congregation be abused by pedophiles. How nice of you, Andy Stanley.
Oz's vile remarks reflect the new independent fundamentalist Baptist movement's extreme stance, which goes beyond mainstream Baptist teachings by advocating for the execution of LGBTQ plus individuals. The Southern Poverty Law Center classifies Oz's church as a hate group because of its dangerous rhetoric. Despite the hateful words, many Christian churches continue to welcome LGBTQ plus individuals, embracing them as part of their mission to spread the gospel and promote inclusivity. Sunshine Cathedral of South Florida is one such queer-friendly church that believes in acceptance. And of course, we are at Sunshine right now. Our studio is on their campus. The sanctuary is behind us, just across the driveway. So there are churches that are out there, but we need to address Pastor Awe. And the sad thing is, he is not an outlier. He may be the more vocal, clearly. He knows how to get clicks, obviously. He knows how to get people's attention. But the people whose attention he gets, he enables people. He comes right out and says, go shoot them. Mm-hmm. Go shoot me. Go shoot Vaughn. Go shoot Darren. Go shoot Faye. He just calls us faggots. He doesn't put a face on it. He doesn't give us a name. John, Vaughn, Matthew, Faye, Al, Steve. He doesn't do that. He doesn't give us any humanity. He tells others to take our humanity away from us. To call him vile would be de rigueur and honestly an understatement. We have to pay attention to him. We don't want to, but we have to pay attention to him because there are many, many more people like him. And they live on your street. They live in your neighborhood. They're in front of you at the cash register at the grocery store. We cannot let this rhetoric go. We must stand up. We must shout and yell and be better than this because he has influence and his ilk have a lot of influence. And they're trying to make their way back into the real halls of power in Washington. So please share this video. Share this vile video with anyone who can stomach it, because we must get this story out there.
You know, as a pastor's kid, evangelical pastor growing up, I went to private Christian schools. I went to private Christian college. After graduating, I became a youth director and music minister. I was still very much in the closet, trying to deny my sexuality and going through conversion therapy and trying every possible thing that I could to not be gay, to not be me, the way that I was created, beautifully and wonderfully created. It has been a journey to reconcile my faith with my identity. And I've been blessed with having the right people around me. But just so everybody who's watching, I know that when you hear a pastor speak such vile things, because you're not supposed to judge the person next to you, right? But the Bible also says that you judge a tree by its fruit. What fruit did that yield? Nothing but hatred and division and anger on both sides. But we have to remember that there is a community out here. Just like Sunshine Cathedral, there are religions, the religious organizations. People are messy. Institutions are messy. That's just a part of life. So nothing is going to be perfect, but there are organizations and there are people and there are religious leaders and groups that you can be involved in to help figure out how to go on your spiritual journey in a safe and conducive environment. So do not be dismayed by that baloney, but also don't just throw that by the wayside. As John said, that's something that we as a community need to pay attention to, because those words are like ammo and they can come at any time and strike anyone at any place. So we need to be ready and vigilant of what's happening in our world around us.
You know, I think what's interesting is, you know, we've heard of other Baptist church in the past that we've had issues with. And I think the one thing we have to recognize is not all of them feel that way. You know, these are these one-off churches that this is happening with. But what I find similar to all of them is, and you saw in the video, where was he reading from? The Old Testament.
Yeah, his thing said KJV only.
Yeah, so it just shows that, you know, I grew up believing, you know, like you, being in a Pentecostal religion, that you believe in the whole Bible. All of it's the truth. You can't just pick part of it and say this is what's real and not. You believe it all or none of it. So I find that these pastors tend to focus on the Old Testament when they're preaching messages like this of hate.
And you think about the canonization of the Bible and how many translations there have been, and even the King James Version, whose name is on that? It's not Jesus, it's not God, it's King James. You know, like there's the Roman Catholic Church had its way with that text. So you go back to like the Dead Sea Scrolls. I remember going and visiting the Dead Sea Scrolls in San Diego when they were on tour, and I just thought, this is so cool. This is such an old artifact with writings of people who were present during the times of Jesus, the stories that I was taught as a kid. And it blew my mind that it's just like telephone. It's playing the game of telephone, right? Things get mistranslated, things get misconstrued. And the reality is, if you look at the Bible as a whole, it speaks on love far more than it speaks on anything else. Then it speaks on money, then it speaks on hate, then it speaks on sexuality, then it speaks on anything. It speaks on love. And that is the epitome of what Christ and God have always been about. God, however you see God, have always been about love, community, inclusion, and support for one another. And so when you have a pastor speaking about another pastor, and saying that this guy is an idiot, that this guy is trying to take advantage of young people by allowing a couple to share love and the Word of God. It is so, and that those people deserve a bullet in their head or the death penalty. That is absolutely disgusting. Like, go back to the fruit on the tree. That man is not yielding anything but vileness. So I'm sorry, get very passionate about stuff like this because it just blows me away that even still today, and that's a young guy. That's a guy my age. And the point that we need to know about that is that young guy was taught that. Talk about teaching children something that is incorrect. He was taught to hate something specifically for a religious purpose that was governed by man, not God.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to touch on something that you mentioned about the translations. Obviously, the Bible has been translated through hundreds of languages over millennia. And the Old Testament goes back, 4,000 years. So to say that, God's word is, never changing and always the same, that's absolutely not true. To truly interpret the Bible, you have to be a scholar with the time to go back and look at the time period. Because if I say today, oh yeah, I was in New York and it's really cool, that means, I had a fun time and it's a great place to be. If I go to 1880 New York and say, oh yeah, New York was really cool, they're going to think,
it's
I
cold?
should bring a sweater.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? So even words, the meaning of words change over time, and that's just in one language. So you really need to go all the way back through translations, through each century, how each word is interpreted. And it's not easy. I haven't done it. I don't think anybody here has done it. Maybe nobody in Fort Lauderdale has done it, because it is. It's a scholar's job. But you have to keep in mind that words do change.
Yes.
Meanings change over time. And people...
And culture.
Culture
changes. Culture and context. It makes so much sense. Yeah. Hermeneutics, exegesis, these are studies of what the Bible is. Going back to Arabic and Hebrew, if you study those languages and understand exactly what he was saying, John said that there are different words for one single word. We know the word love in the Bible is there so many times, but phileo is there, eros is there. There are all these different types, agape, of love that are descriptive of what type of love in that context is important.
I'm thinking I could be wrong. I don't want to misquote, but I think that is the one word that is used the most. That's the number one word that is like the highest count.
If we're speaking of love as the generic coverall,
I believe it is. Yep.
I thought it was thou.
Thou. Well, thou west.
Oh.